Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Dog on It Trucking Podcast. What's got me so excited this week? Dr. Randy Flemmer is on the show, and if you are a trainer or anybody who is interested in motivating other people in the way that you need them motivated, you've got to listen to this week's show. Dr. Randy Flemmer is a specialist in driver training. All right, with that, let's get on with the podcast. It wasn't until I was cruising your website that I realized I was dealing with a doctor today. Can you explain to our viewers and listeners what you are a doctor of?
I have a doctorate in educational technology with an emphasis in mentorship and coaching.
An emphasis in mentorship and coaching. That is cool, because obviously in trucking, we do hopefully at least, our new drivers, when they come on board, they get mentored and coached once they get their class. In your province, a class 1, in the rest of Canada, or in my province, what's called a class A. How do you go about, what skills can you give to an experienced driver so that he can better mentor a new person?
Well, I think it starts with understanding what your own skill set is. When I developed our programs, I had a lot of experience working with professional drivers of all types. And through that, I discovered that professional drivers, the real professionals, have certain skills and attributes that maybe the average driver doesn't have. And so the question became, how do I take that information and then make it available to the people that are taking my courses? And so what I really tried to look at was why are professional drivers professional? What makes them professional? What attitudes, what skill sets, what strategies do they use? And then how can I make it applicable to the people taking my courses? And so a lot I've learned from professional drivers over decades of working directly hands with them. And some of the best drivers I found were really some of the motor coach operators that had a set standard that was, I think, above most others. And I think mostly because they always have the lives of many people in their hands. And so I spent a lot of time with many of those drivers and understanding them, and from my point of view, my own skill sets and my own background in that, testing that against other things. And so I came up with what we do in our courses based on that. So it starts with the idea of what do professional drivers do and do well that we can learn from.
Why did you pick the transportation industry as your focus?
I think it comes down to is the average driver drives about 15 to 20,000 kilometers per year, and professional drivers can go 100,000 kilometers a year or more. Now, on average, the average driver has a collision once every 10,000 K or once every X amount of kilometers. Professional drivers, the real ones, have significantly less. Well, why is that? Well, it's because of the things that they do that make them professionals. And so those are the things that we can learn.
That's really cool. I mean, professional drivers, I am in agreement with you, are professional, and they crash far fewer than other drivers that are not as professional. Are there some specific attributes to a professional driver that makes them crash less, do you think?
Well, I have a number of ones that I chose, but if I was to choose 2 or 3, it starts with a professional attitude, the idea that they are a professional, that they take pride in doing the right thing at the right time, and take pride in how they do. One of the interesting stories I have is I was talking with one of the best motor coach operators I'd met. He'd been driving motor coach operator for 35 years and had no collisions at all. And so I said, what's your secret? What is it that makes you that much better? And he said, I close my door. Um, okay, nice. I'm not sure what that means though. Could you go further? He goes, yeah, I knew that. Uh, when I get up to close my door, I look back and I look at the faces and everybody on that bus, and I make a mental commitment to get them to their destination safely. And that's motivation for me. And so I thought, that says something. And it's a very good thing about taking your attitude and doing and taking pride in what you do and doing it the right way every time. And that's a attitude is one of the most important aspects of driving. So that says it all right there in terms of that. I
And
think the second, oh, you want to say
go ahead.
something?
No, go ahead. What's number two?
I think that the second one is how professional drivers deal with vision.
Hmm.
Like most professional drivers have a natural scanning, what I call a scanning pattern, in that they are scanning on a 360-degree basis and they do it as a habit. It's natural. So they're just automatically doing it all the time. Well, most average drivers don't really have a pattern. They don't really have any habitual way of visually looking around and making sure that they're safe. And so the visual scanning pattern is something that I advocate that all new drivers, all existing drivers should think about and develop their own. Something like, looking long and wide, checking your instrumentation, going through your mirrors, but a pattern that they repeat, and it's habitual. It just happens all the time.
And do you have a third?
Um, those are the big ones. The other one is what I call is driving with an intention of space.
Hmm.
See, I think professional drivers have a really good spatial awareness around themselves. And you can talk all about following distance and appropriate following distance and what are the rules and the regulations, but it's different than what I call driving with an intention of space. In other words, you're driving with the amount of space 360 degrees around you, giving yourself a pocket of safety, adding some additional seconds of following distance to make sure that you have that. And better yet, the use of follow of driving with an intention of space is that all drivers, and I guess this could even be a fourth one, is drivers need to stay in the moment of driving. Now,
Right.
I have a philosophy that underlines everything that we do in our organization, and I call it our core belief. It's that regardless of anyone's knowledge, skill, experience, or training, there are some days that we are better drivers than we are on other days. It's just, I don't care what you are, there are just some days you are. And there are moments in time, at any given time, that you drift from your mentally active center, where you're in the moment of driving, you drift. Well, the best drivers, the professional drivers, recognize the hints like they've driven for 2 or 3K and don't remember them. They get caught by surprise at a set of lights. They miss the pedestrian crossing the road. They have to do something quick, like they have to hit their brakes hard more than once. These are hints that they see that at this moment, right in time, right now, they're not focused. They've lost. They've moved to a kind of a distraction level. And so they have strategies and skills to move them back for the rest of that particular trip. And driving with an intention of space is one of those things. So for the rest of that trip, a lot of them will now focus on, where is the space around me? How do I utilize that space? What's in that space? And it gives them an ongoing internal mental commentary for the rest of that trip to stay in the moment of driving. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense to me. I'm a safety guy, and I love what you're saying because it's my belief that speed and following distance, or just speed, is the number one culprit. Um, when a driver is going too fast, he doesn't allow himself to have the right space around the truck. And so what you've done is taken that one step further, and you're talking about space around 360 degrees of the truck, which is absolutely correct. Uh, if you were able to speak to drivers, and I thankfully, and I thank you drivers for watching and listening, how would you convince a driver to keep, the professional driver, the vision, the space that you were talking about, the right attitude? Do you have words, or I'm not sure how to say it, but how do you convince a driver to adjust their attitude?
Well, I think if you're talking to a professional driver, you approach them from that perspective. You've just you've chosen to be a professional. This is what you're doing for your career. You're spending many hours of your day, of your life, doing this job. Is it worth doing right, or is it not? Do you want to be known as somebody who does it right all the time? Like 30 years from now, how do you want people to look at you and your career? And if that's what you're doing, you're making yourself a career person. You're doing professional driving as a career. How much effort does it take to do it right every time and find yourself where it is? You have to take and make it a sense of pride, something that you can look back and talk to your kids about and say, this is who I was. This is who I am. I'm a professional driver. And so applying that to them really works. And if you look at change theory, how do you convince people to change? How do you convince them to do things differently? Well, it starts off with convincing them that change might be necessary. Let me give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take your hands like this and put them together? One thumb over one thumb. Okay? Now take them apart, put them back together with the thumb underneath now, the other way, the opposite way. How's that feel?
Awkward.
Does it feel wrong?
Yes.
Awkward? But is it wrong, or is it just different?
Oh, it's not wrong. It's just different.
Different. People feel uncomfortable when they're doing something different. And the trick is to show them, first of all, give them some of their own personal choice in making change, and help them understand that change is not bad, it's just different. And change will make you feel uncomfortable. So it takes some time to get changes impacted. And so you have to make a commitment for at least a month on a new habit, a new strategy, a new whatever, to let it integrate into your personality, let it integrate your habits. And it starts with you choosing to make that change because you think it's the right change. And then physically and mentally having to take the time to do it all the time until it becomes, well, as we know in research, an unconscious competence. You just do it because that's what you do. And that's your goal is over time. So many things that professional drivers do, the really good ones, are unconscious competence. They just do it because they just do it naturally, habitually. And that's what we as average drivers, the average drivers has to look at and say, that's a good goal to be and where to go.
Yeah, I do a fair amount or a lot of driver training, and I'm going to use a lot of what you're saying right now. I'll be honest, because it's gold. All right, and I thank you for that. So you've started a business. How old? So let's say the name of the business.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Uh, history started as I got into the business. Actually, to get my way through school, I became a driving instructor to pay for my schooling. And then over time, I bought half a driving school,
Okay.
and at that time it was called A Driving School and Calgary Driving Test Card Rentals. And then over time, bought out my partner, and my wife and I ran it. And then I went and finished my doctorate, and she ran the school. And I took a couple of years off to finish my doctorate and get everything underway. And after I finished that, my wife said to me, "So, what was it like to take a couple of years and just do whatever you wanted and just explore?" And I said, "That was the best time in my life. It was just wonderful to do that." She goes, "Great, I start today. You get the business." And so I said, "Okay, well, if I'm doing that, then I'm going to make some major changes." And that's when I started to focus on we changed our name to Fleet Safety International. We really focused on our corporate work, and I started all our online training because that's where my doctorate was. really started to build online courses and think about that and systems and techniques. And so we've had a few decades here of really good growth and doing things a little differently than other people. We
Can you give me an example of what you're
philosophy,
doing
right?
different?
Well, I think it all starts with core philosophy. Like, as part of what I've done over the past 40 years, I traveled all around the world and visited with driver education professionals everywhere. And I looked at their systems and what they were doing. And some are just really good, and some are not as good. Some what I call some systems, which I call are hellfire and vent systems, which you must do this, you have to do that. They never sat well with me. It doesn't, because people just tend to rebel against that.
Right.
And that's how I eventually came up with this core philosophy that, you know what, we are all human. That regardless of whatever you've done, knowledge, skill, experience, and training, you're not always going to be there. So if we don't recognize that in training, if we don't understand that that's a natural part of who we are, and then build strategies, habits, and techniques to work within that framework, we're not doing our jobs as trainers, as real trainers. And when we're not really making an impact. And so everything we do is built all around the idea that we're human, that we're going to make mistakes. So what's that mean? And how do we, first of all, recognize when we're not at our best? And what can we do when we find that? But also, what habits can we do that even when we're not our best, just simply kick in, like our patterns of our scanning patterns, that if you do habitually, you may not be at your best that day, but because that is a natural habit you're doing, it kicks in and probably saves you a few times.
Well,
So from that point of view, that's what we do.
And I would suggest that an habitual habit, when you are doing it, even when you're not at your best, you're still better than 95% of the other people that you're occupying the roads with.
I would agree with that. Building those habitual, strong driving habits is really, really important. And certainly any up and coming professional driver, they want to set themselves up for success. And to do that, they need to understand from the best people in the industry what it is, and what it means to be a professional driver, and then take it upon themselves to take the pride and effort to do what they need to do to reach that standard.
Well, one of the things you said there is that they have to want to be a professional driver.
Exactly.
You know, I think you and I can both work with those who want to be a professional. Those who don't give a damn, unfortunately, they shouldn't be a truck driver.
That's correct. And you could say that of many people in many industries.
Yes, but not every industry has other people's lives in their hands. As a truck driver, a motor coach driver, anybody who shares the public highways.
Yes.
I mean, doctors and nurses and other first responders all have our lives in their hands as well. We're not professional drivers aren't the only ones, but we can have a big impact. When we make a mistake, unfortunately, it can be a big, big mistake.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that I love about your system is it's different than some of the other online training systems. Can you tell us why you made the choice to not have a subscription model, but to have I'll call it a purchase training model? Not the right word probably, but you can buy one-off training is where I'm trying to get to. Why did you choose to go down that road?
Well, we actually have some, if you're a large corporate company, then we have some companies that will sometimes say, okay, we want to buy a group package and we make that available. But we want this really to be available to individual people, individual drivers. And they don't want to take a subscription and do, I think, over and over and over, or have to be locked into things. And so we have the ability to do what you want as a company, but I also wanted to attract the individual truck drivers to say, there's a course here that you can take. and take one course, and if you like it, then take a second course on a different topic, or come back in some time and get a refresher course. And we try and update our courses on a regular basis so that there's some new content or new information that comes in every few years to make sure that it's up to date and standardized.
Oh, one of the courses I saw on the website, and I will have links in the show notes below to your website, is an hours of service course.
Yes.
And I noticed that it talks about the federal hours of service here in Canada, but also about cross-border trucking.
Yes.
How is a course like that? And it was, if I remember, a 3-hour program, roughly.
Somewhere around there, 3 hours. And we just updated that one with some of the new U.S. code that just came through.
Yeah, and that's where I was going. I was going to ask, have you updated that one to the new U.S. regs?
Yes. Yeah. There was a section on the U.S. and then in there, I've emphasized it right in the course itself. So we just actually updated that within the last month or so.
Oh, there. And you see, so all of our listeners and viewers, they now have another resource that they can go to. And as they say, I would encourage our listeners and viewers to check out the table of contents, because you've got an awful lot of information there.
It's taken a few years to build the content up and to do it in a way that I felt that it really was of a quality that I could be proud of and send out to other people and say, here it is. This is some great information for you, and I hope it helps you become a professional or more professional, or do things differently, or add to your content knowledge. And so it's been very good.
And so there's a lot of things, and I want to get to one in particular training video in a second, but there's a lot on here for the professional truck driver. The one that I thought was amazing, and I wish I'd seen, I'm now 65, so my kids have been driving for years and years, but one of the things I wish I'd seen when I was teaching my kids to drive is, and the title is Teach Your Teen to Drive. So tell me a little bit about that, even though I'm thinking that we're probably, I hope, talking to a lot of truck drivers that have children that are of that age group that they will be teaching them to drive. What's included in that course?
Well, I'm actually glad you just asked that, because that's a brand new course for us. Yay. And it actually doesn't fully launch until this Friday. Oh. We're launching it Canada-wide. Just finished it. And the concept behind that is, with COVID and everything else, parents, and it's more than that, as I realized that driving schools are great. But if you really want to create lifelong driving skills with your teenager, you need to be part of the process. And so this site is all about the process and what you can do. And it takes it, what I like about when I developed this course is I wanted complete flexibility for both the parent and the teen. And so it's self-inclusive, that you have freedom of the entire menu. You can skip screens, you can stay on screens longer. There are hands-on activities that you can evaluate yourself, KPIs, key performance indicators, it's right. And it takes it from things like, like it's the first opening one talks all about how to be a mentor, how to things to think about as a parent when you're teaching your teen, how to talk to them, how to evaluate them, all of that. It talks about risk and how risks in teen driving are influenced in that way. And then it goes into topics like driving for the first time, driving, residential driving, parking and backing up, moving into major roads, freeways and highways, driving in the wintertime, driving a manual standard transmission vehicle. And it goes through a number of topics, and then you can choose. Like if you've got somebody you've already, your teen, they're doing well, maybe there's a few things they're not so good at, but you don't know how to do it. You can look at it and go, oh, there's a section there. I can hop right to that, skip through. There's content that you can go through and understand so that you know what you're supposed to be teaching, and you can do it right beside your teen or have both of you do it. And then there are activities specifically to help you with those things. And you can have it on your phone, so it's all mobile. So you can track it online and make notes on it online, go back later, or you can look at your phone and look at the activities and know they're there. So we really think that this is a great program for parents and teenagers.
That's awesome because, as I say, I sincerely wish it was available or I had known about it when I had to teach. So I had the privilege of teaching my two children, but also my girlfriend's two children. And I think they turned out pretty darn good drivers. However, new skills are always welcome. So, especially with teenagers, it's difficult.
It is. It is. It's not easy.
Now,
And I've been teaching teenagers for a long time. So a lot of what's in there is based on my experience on teaching teenagers. That's how I started my career. So
now, is there, even in that program of teaching the teenagers, would a professional driver pick up some tips in that as well?
everything I talk about what it means to be a lifelong safe driver is in there, including the information about a professional driver. We want to start teenagers out the right way. And so getting them thinking correctly right from day one is really important to us. And so we start with those kind of concepts and why you should be doing the things that you do.
Perfect. I think that, Randy, is a great way to wrap up the show. The name of your company is Fleet Safety International. And of course, we've got a link to that in the show notes below. And we've got your contact info if people want to reach out. Dr. Randy Flemmer, I thank you so much for your time for coming on the show today.
And thank you for listening to me.
Oh, it was perfect. I found you through the Hamilton Spectator when they quoted you. So I thought that was awesome. I hadn't heard of you before, and I reached out, and I appreciate your time, and I sincere thank you for coming on.
Well, I appreciate you giving me time just to talk. I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy talking about what I do.
Perfect. Dr. Randy Flemmer, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you loved the show as much as I did. Please leave us a like, a thumbs up, a review, a comment, a rating if it is in your heart. Thank you so much. And I do really appreciate your time. And join us again next week for another exciting interview.